I feel like I should make this video because I feel like that it's important to talk to someone about anime live action adaptations. As we all know, anime to live action adaptations don't work as well as films or television, and Hollywood is just basically not understanding too much about anime, and basically they just want to rip it to shreds by adapting them into live action, either for movies or TV shows. Unlike comic book superhero film adaptations to film or TV, or occasionally with video game adaptation movies or television, they don't seem to work that well. They are not like the book adaptations that you have seen. They don't seem to work that well. Here are perfect examples of anime to live action adaptations not working that well. Dragon Ball Evolution, the god-awful Netflix Death Note film, and the god-awful live-action Ghost in the Shell film starring Scarlett Johansson, Fullmetal Alchemist, the god-awful live-action, infamously Netflix series of Cowboy Bebop. Yeah. Hollywood thinks that anime is just people just talking gibberish and people just fighting and some really cool actions and just everything, and they thought that, hey, let's do something like that with adapting it into live action. And guess what they did? They screwed it up, because they don't seem to have any respect for foreign films at all. Hollywood doesn't seem to have any respect for foreign films and doesn't really understand anime. Anime is not just people talking, people fighting, and everything like that. It's also not about characters going through adventures and everything like that. It's more than that. It's art. It's visual. It has better storytelling, and it develops the characters really, really well. I mean, there are some of my favorite animes that I could mention about. Like, there's Dragon Ball Z, there's Yu Yu Hakusho, there's Cowboy Bebop, there is Samurai Champloo, there's One Piece, there's Naruto, and there's Space Dandy, Kill la Kill, Little Witch Academia, and Space Patrol Luluko, and so many others. They did a really amazing job with. Also, anime inspires cinema. Anime inspires filmmakers. Like, take for example with Ghost in the Shell. If you took a look at the film, you can see that it heavily inspired action films and sci-fi films in general, and everything outside of the sci-fi genre and everything. You can tell that it heavily inspired films like The Matrix and so many other action films to date, and sci-fi films in general, and especially inspiring art. And that movie had got me into filmmaking. I remember seeing it as a kid for the first time. I remember being creeped out by these scenes, and I remember saying to myself, damn, that is pretty cool. And I remember rewatching it back in high school. And then I saw the teaser trailer for the live-action Ghost in the Shell film starring Scarlett Johansson. Now, thankfully, I did not have a chance to see the movie, and I refused to get that movie because of how bad it is. And from what I've heard, it was just so bad, and people are saying that it whitewashes the characters and everything like that, and which it completely does. And I feel like that Scarlett Johansson was not a really good actress to play Motoko. Now, don't get me wrong, Scarlett Johansson is a really great actress. I don't think she was that good at playing Motoko, and half the time she feels like that she's falling asleep from what I've seen. I can never understand why Hollywood would ever want to adapt beloved and popular anime into live action adaptations, albeit terrible ones, like how they did with Dragon Ball Evolution. Notice about how they did the characters wrong. What do they do to those characters exactly? Goku doesn't go to high school, and Goku is basically not like this. He's not like this raging teenager who has a crush on Chi-Chi. Plus, in the anime, Goku is obsessed with fighting. Goku loves fighting. I mean, it's not like that it's not like that he wants to hurt anybody. He basically wants to be the strongest, and he's basically obsessed with fighting. It's not like that he's like that. It's not like that he wants to hurt anybody or anything like that. He's a pacifist as well, so there was that. He's a bit of a pacifist. He doesn't want to hurt anybody and basically put them in danger. He just wants to use his fighting to protect someone that he loves. He basically is obsessed with fighting. And, of course, with how they did wrong with Piccolo. Now, people are confused about which Piccolo. Is it Demon King Piccolo, or is it Piccolo Jr., aka the one that we all know from the franchise? The one that we all know and love from the franchise. They kind of mix it between Demon King Piccolo and basically just Piccolo Jr. But, yeah. Alright, so, let me explain. In the King Piccolo saga, basically, Goku fought King Piccolo, and later, when King Piccolo was defeated, King Piccolo would later give birth. King Piccolo would later give birth to, well, Piccolo, the one that we all know in the series, aka Piccolo Jr. And basically, Goku and Piccolo, they did start off as enemies, but eventually they did become friends over time. They become allies, and basically they have a respect for one another. And it also shows both Piccolo's good side and his bad side. The Namekians are supposed to be like this peaceful, caring people who basically just want to live through peaceful times. But in this god-awful adaptation, they are not peaceful people, they're just raging, fighting people. Another example, The Last Airbender. Another example, how about we take it with the live-action Avatar The Last Airbender film. Just take a look how they butchered the characters, like how they butchered Aang, and how they pronounce his name wrong, like Ong or something like that. It's Aang. I mean, come on. Now, Avatar The Last Airbender is by far one of my favorite shows to date. I remember seeing it as a kid. I remember seeing it in Nickelodeon. Yes, technically it's not anime, and it was more of Western animation, but it heavily took a lot of inspiration from animes like Dragon Ball Z, Cowboy Bebop, Yu Yu Hakusho, and so much more. If you look at the world building surrounding it, you can tell. But anyways, back to the live-action Last Airbender film. Just take a look how terrible the characters are designed. I mean, they're supposed to be looking like the ones from the show, but if you look at the film, you can see that they're not the same characters that we all know from the show, and they're not the same characters that we all know in general, especially how they butchered Zuko. Zuko is supposed to be one of the most relatable characters in Avatar The Last Airbender. He's basically just this desperate kid who wants to be back in his hometown of the Fire Nation, and he wants his father to basically just appreciate him. But over time he realizes that his dad is a terrible person, and the way about how he treated him was just it's just abuse. But here, however, he's not really relatable, and he's not really desperate, and he just feels more like Piccolo from Dragon Ball Evolution. Also, Aang is supposed to be wise, but in here, he feels like a walking, talking robot, and just feels like that he's scared shitless. Those are perfect examples about how to not adapt them into these live-action adaptations of movies or TV shows. And now they're doing it again with The Last Airbender, this time as a Netflix series. They are going to be making a live-action Netflix series, in which I am not really looking forward to it. I'm also not really looking forward to the live-action One Piece. It looks pretty terrible. It looks so shitty. I mean, the CGI is just, it's garbage. It looks really garbage. It looks like Fanforstic rather than One Piece. It doesn't really look anything like One Piece at all. I mean, sure, they did have the creator of One Piece, Ichigo Ocha, to basically be the producer of this series, although from what I heard from behind the scenes drama, I heard that he wasn't that fully involved into it. At least that's what I heard from some behind the scenes drama. I'm not sure. But anyways, they've also basically had 100 something episodes ready for the live action One Piece series. Really? They're wasting a lot of money for that? I mean, come on. Why would you want to waste your money on a live action adaptation One Piece? I mean, it's not really worth it. Live action One Piece is definitely not worth it. And if you see in the trailer, I feel like that the characters just feel like that they're not the characters that we all know and love from the anime or from the manga in general. These characters, Luffy doesn't feel energetic. Luffy just feels like that he's talking like a robot. And Nami just feels like that she just wants to just fall asleep all the time. She feels like one of those robots from that Will Smith movie. Zoro here doesn't really feel like Zoro at all. They don't really feel like a team. They feel like something like from Fanforstic. Also, the first impressions of the live action One Piece series is not doing very well. From what I've seen on YouTube, it's not doing that well, and critics are not too kind for this. And I can definitely see why and how how anime live action adaptations don't work. They don't work as movies, they don't work as series. Anime should just stick to being anime. No live action adaptations. No nothing. And you're probably wondering, what about the fan films? Well, they're just fan films. They're not like actual movies that were released in theaters. And from what I heard, they're probably better than other live action adaptations that Hollywood has been doing. They're just trying to hype up the series for the live action One Piece, because we as hardcore One Piece fans are going to be like, hey look, there's a live action One Piece series, let's go watch it on Netflix. And when we saw it, we realized it's not as good as the original. And if you haven't seen One Piece, I highly encourage you to watch the anime. I highly encourage you to watch the original anime. Even though that it has a lot of filler, it still is pretty good, and it still is one of my favorite shows to date, and it's one of my favorite animes in general. I loved it when I watched it back on 4Kids, then later on Toonami, and then I remember watching it again on Toonami Adult Swim, then later Hulu, and then later Netflix. And I remember watching it with some friends that were watching it after they were finishing with their tests. And I had a fun time watching the series with them. I know that One Piece isn't really for everyone, but if you are having a hard time getting into the anime, then I highly encourage you to read the manga instead. There are also anime creators and manga artists that are basically just ashamed of god-awful live-action anime adaptations. Like, for example, with Akira Toriyama. For those of you who do not know, Akira Toriyama was just ashamed of the cursive of Dragon Ball Evolution and how terrible the movie was. And so he made two Dragon Ball films, two theatrical Dragon Ball films, to make sure that people just forget about the god-awful live-action adaptation of Dragon Ball. And that would be Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods and Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F. We also have two more theatrical Dragon Ball films. And those two other Dragon Ball films are also Dragon Ball Super Broly and Dragon Ball Super Superhero. One of my all-time favorite films, and one of my all-time favorite anime and foreign films in general. That, of course, along with Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. Or another example of anime creators just being ashamed of god-awful live-action adaptations. Shinichiro Watanabe, for example, the creator of Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, and Space Dandy. One of my all-time favorite shows to date, and one of my favorite animes in general. Anyways, from what I heard from everyone, Shinichiro Watanabe is basically just ashamed of the existence of the god-awful live-action Cowboy Bebop adaptation, and basically just slams the creators of the show and also slams Netflix in general and how they adapted the characters wrong. Like, for example, how they modernized Faye, and how they also got the characters completely wrong despite having their looks and appearances and some of their personalities true. At the same time, the series does feel more cartoonish. And also, the amount of use of F-bombs that basically just don't really serve a purpose other than, hey, this is violence, so let's just stick it true to the anime. But that doesn't really work like that. And plus, there was not even that much F-bombs in Cowboy Bebop. Well, there was 0 F-bombs, but anyways, yeah. Shinichiro Watanabe basically just mentions about how he wasn't involved that much in the process. He wasn't that much of a creative influence in the series, even though that they did brought him, yes, but they didn't really give him any respect whatsoever. Which I can definitely see why. You can just tell that they basically are just disrespecting Shinichiro Watanabe and basically just going on their own route.